And this next fight, we got a bantamweight fight between Victor Henry and Raphael Assunscao. And Raphael Assuncao is a legend, but the time is definitely near for him. Maybe has already come, and he's lost 4 fights in a row, 3 in devastating fashion. He hasn't gotten a win since July of 2018. And like always, he's been fighting fighters at the top of the heap in the division. But one thing that is alarming, and he's always been very durable, notoriously difficult to hit. In his first 32 fights, he'd only been finished 2 times and only once by KO TKO. His last 5 fights, he got dropped, hurt badly before getting choked out against Marlon Moraes. And then he got knocked out cold against Cody Garbrandt and Ricky Simone, which were his last 2 fights. This is the end of the road for Sunsao. He has to win this fight if he wants to keep going in his career. He's 40 years old at this point, and he's accomplished it all. I mean, he's beaten almost all the best fighters of his era in his weight class. He's even beaten some guys like Joe Lozon, George Masvidal out of his weight class. He has nothing left to prove outside of maybe ending his career in a positive note on a win. And he has changed it up. He's training in Extreme Couture at the UFC PI for this fight, opposed to in Atlanta like usual. So we'll see if that helps him snap this losing streak. But Victor Henry is definitely a step down on paper in competition to a majority of Assuncao's opponents over the last 9-10 years. But he also hasn't had that chance to prove himself after grinding it out for 26 fights before making it to the UFC. Henry entered the UFC with a bang in his first fight. He went in there against Raoni Barcelos and soundly defeated a man who's one of the better fighters in the world at 135 pounds. Really opened some eyes. And Henry had won 9 of his last 10 fights and beaten some good names in that run as well, such as Albert Morales. He beat Masanori Kanehara, Yuki Montoya. He beat Denis Lafritev. He beat Kyler Phillips, Takufumi Otsuka. And Raphael Assuncao is definitely the biggest name fighter he's ever stepped in there with, and one of the best bantamweights of all time. But he's catching Assuncao at the right time. Assuncao's well out of his prime, and Victor Henry's a big favorite. So this is a huge fight for Victor Henry. He's went in there. He was a big underdog against Raoni Barcelos, who's kind of a tough fighter to face, but doesn't have the name. And now he's getting in there with a guy that's a little bit older, that he's a big favorite against after showing that performance against Barcelos, but as a name and has a history behind him. And if Victor Henry can get this win, he'll be right in the mix. He could be fighting top 10 guys. So it's a really good fight. And at 35 years old, it's a fight that he needs to take at this point in his career. He can't be lollygalling around and taking lower level matchups. But when you look at this fight, it is a much different fight than the fight he had with Raoni Barcelos. In the Raoni Barcelos fight, Victor Henry got a guy in Barcelos that was wanting to stick in the pocket, throw combinations, look to probably get the knockout on Henry. I think maybe he underestimated him a little bit. He didn't mix in the wrestling at all. And Victor Henry showed, he has a great chin. There's a ton of volume, switches stances, real slick striking. He mixes the level of his punches and his kicks. He throws a lot of different variations of strikes, and he's just real slick. And he has a great chin, and his volume really wears on guys. He doesn't have that one-punch KO power, but he was landing sneaky shots that were hurting Barcelos too. And he's definitely improved his striking quite a bit. Before, he was more of a grinder, a guy that he didn't have the best wrestling against high-level wrestlers, but he was able to grind out lower-level fighters. And that's why he, I think, never got that chance in the UFC, because he had more of a boring style. And then you saw him against grapplers that were better than him, and he was getting out-grappled in those fights, getting taken down and held down. So I could see why the UFC could look at that and say, we don't want a grappler that maybe isn't the highest level grappler, but can beat some entertaining strikers on the roster. But now Henry has turned into an entertaining striker himself, and he has great cardio. He has a high-level experience. He can grapple as well. And but why I say it's different matchup here with Raphael Assuncao is Assuncao is, even now in his older age, that he's slower and he's not as mobile, he's still a guy that's never going to just sit in the pocket and make it a war like Raoni Barcelos did. Assuncao is going to be a guy that's moving, looking to use his footwork to land counter punches, be in, be out. And Henry, he didn't have to deal with anyone really trying to take him down in his last fight, which I do think he has subpar takedown defense. He stands really tall and likes to come forward, really press forward heavily, which does give up the hips. And Assuncao, I don't think he's as good of a wrestler as he used to be, but Assuncao, I think in this fight is going to be looking to move around and land his counters, which is going to be there to, as Henry's going to be there to hit. He stands tall, he has his chin in the air, and even though he has fairly good defense, he is hittable. And I think Assuncao, in his prime could have landed some counters and could have maybe had some takedowns and made this an easy fight. But, at what point is it kind of fool's gold to keep saying, oh, Assuncao has some value here, he has some value at plus 260? At one point, the value is gone and maybe he shouldn't keep fighting anymore. And against Ricky Simón, I really felt like his, ability to take a punch was gone. He was he got rocked off the first shot that he took and looked a little bit slower. He didn't seem like he had that ability to take a shot nearly as well as he did in the past. And I'm kind of worried about that here against Henry, who's a high volume guy. Henry, I don't think is as explosive or fast and powerful as a Ricky Simón, though. And he's not really a guy. He only has 6 knockouts, and a few of those have been TKOs with ground and pound. So he's not the type of guy to usually get to finish by knockout on the feet. So I'm actually going to say this one goes to decision, but I could easily see Henry taking him out too. And it's just too hard to pick Assuncao these days. I think matchup-wise, it's a better matchup than some of the recent guys because he's a guy that's going to be coming forward, coming at him, and he could take him down. He really couldn't take down Ricky Simón when he fought Cody Garbrandt. He was getting a really fast, slick striker. But, I mean, Henry, he's not in his prime necessarily. You could say he's 35 too, but he's bigger guy. He's more durable at this stage in his career. He's putting on better performances. His striking, he looks faster, more crisp than Assuncao does these days. And I think he's going to be able to get the win here and probably win by decision. So I'm going to go with Victor Henry in this one.